Hello Horus Heresy fans, welcome to Heresy, the Horus Heresy talk show. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Iron Hands Legion. We're going to be talking about their rules, what they do, and how you can use those things to make a fun and interesting and well-themed force that also performs well on the tabletop and, make sure you can give your opponent some great games. Now, worth bearing in mind that this episode is being recorded before I've got the books in hand, so this is mostly being done thanks to the great YouTubers that are out there who've gone through all the rules and stuff already. So, could be some minor mistakes creeping in here and there on stats or points. If there are, forgive me. Hopefully there won't be too many. So, first of all, why have I chosen Iron Hands to talk about first? Well, Iron Hands are the Legion that I've chosen to play in Horus Heresy. So obviously I'm looking at the models right now, I'm looking at the armies, I'm looking at what I want to paint and what I want to build, and also I'm looking at the Iron Hands rules and trying to figure out which ones are good, which ones are bad, what works well with the army, that kind of stuff. So that's what we're going to have a little bit of a talk about. We're going to talk about what they do. So first of all, the army-wide rule, the Medusan Scales. I think this is one of the best rules that any of the Legions got, actually. So when I decided to play Iron Hands, for reasons I talk about in another episode, which is mostly to do with ease of painting and their lore, reading the rules when the rules became available and seeing they had something as interesting as this was a really nice surprise. So you get -1 strength when you're shooting at Iron Hands infantry with guns. Now that's really powerful. It means that the majority of guns around the sort of 6, 5, 4 strength mark get a -1 to wound. It doesn't make any difference, for a normal Marine against a strength 7 gun, but once you get to strength 8 gun, like a melter weapon, for example, what it does mean is that it makes your Marine immune to the it will not die effect of that doubling your toughness as well. So it's great for making your Marines a bit tougher, particularly against smaller weapons. It's also great for stopping your Marines getting instant death. And that's really important because a lot of things in Iron Hands have got feel no pain. And the difference between getting to roll your feel no pain and not roll your feel no pain because you're getting instant death is also big. So that's really good. Obviously for things that aren't Marines with toughness 4, this ability just gets better and better though. So basically the better your toughness, the better this ability is really. And this affects everything that's not a vehicle. Notably, Dreadnoughts is the big thing that this affects. So Dreadnoughts are toughness 7 or toughness 8 in the case of Leviathans in the game. And getting -1 strength to shooting them is almost always, for the weapons that are going to be shooting at these, like last cannons, missile launchers, melter guns, is almost always going to be -1 to wound, which is just really, really good, really big for their survivability, makes them really, really tough, really gives you that Iron Hands feeling. I think, unfortunately, it will evoke some memories for some people of some 40k Iron Hands armies that were not an awful lot of fun to play against. But it is a really powerful rule for them. It really does make these things tough. And it also works on other things that have got a toughness value as well. So things like land speeders, javelins, rapier, artillery pieces even. Anything with a toughness value, particularly a higher toughness value, just gets better and better with this rule. So I think that represents really well, the play style of the Iron Hands, just being harder to kill, tough, and very stubborn. So also as well on top of this though, as well as that rule, and I think that rule standalone would be a great Legion trait, they also give their vehicles, it will not die on a 6+, or +1 to it will not die if they've already got it from another source. So it will not die, not generally the greatest rule in the world, really. The main reason being it requires the unit to actually still be alive before you ever get to roll it, which can be a bit problematic because, good people will just focus down your tank or whatever and make sure it's dead so it never gets to roll it will not die roll. And the value on that's not even very easy to hit. A 6 or a 5 if they've got, there's an equipment piece they get called Blessed Auto Simulacra, which gives them +1 so they can be on a 5 base. It's still not even that easy to hit, really, to succeed that roll. So the way to make this good, if you want to make this good, is obviously to have a tougher vehicle. So, if you've got something with armor 14 or maybe effective armor 15 with a flare shield, the likelihood is people are going to be doing more glances to try and get rid of your vehicle. And the more hit points it's got, the more likelihood it is it's going to take them multiple turns to do that, and the more this rule starts to actually become good. So if you think about some of the really big tanks, like a Spartan with a flare shield, effective armor 15 on the front, and 6 hit points, people are going to have to glance that down, in some cases over multiple turns, which gives you a chance to roll those It Will Not Die rolls and put some hit points back on the tank. Now, also another thing Iron Hands are good at, which we'll talk about in a bit, is Battlesmith as well, which is also another way to get hull points back on your vehicles. So when you combine those things, you could very easily have a vehicle that hangs around for like an extra entire turn because it's getting multiple sources of healing. And as the game goes on and more stuff dies, and you're both shooting up each other's armies, you might even get to the point where the amount of guns they've got left isn't enough to outdo your tech marines and your iron fathers and your battlesmiths in general repairing your vehicles. So this can be really good if you make if you get the right units for it. But what I like about this is, even though I think online people have not been too excited about this rule, it's kind of free, because the first half of the rule, the -1 strength for things with a toughness value, is really good on its own, and I genuinely think one of the best, if not the best, Legion trait that we've seen so far. Which is kind of weird. Iron Hand's really not a very popular Legion, and I don't know whether that's because of the flavor or the lore, or maybe because they were, because they were massacred so hard, they didn't really get an awful lot of airtime in the books and that kind of stuff. So people have not, really gotten into the Legion flavor-wise. I don't know, but normally people like to look for things that look powerful and play those things. But it's less of a heresy thing, I guess. So anyway, they got that rule, really great Legion rule, really cool. Now their Legion unique reaction is called the Gorgon Spite. Now I think the Legion unique reactions that we've seen, some of them are really good. Like the Alpha Legion one, where they get to like redeploy 12 inches away and scatter a little bit, is really good. But some of them aren't very good. This one, I think, falls firmly into the very, very good category. So effectively, this is a once per game Overwatch reaction. I think in absolutely every way. I think the rules text is identical. It's an Overwatch reaction, except they get to shoot twice, but all their weapons get the Get Hot rule, which is just a really powerful thing to have access to. So if you imagine, usually Overwatch is going to do some damage to things on the way in, particularly now you fire a full ballistic skill nowadays, but firing twice, particularly if the unit is about to get charged by something that is going to kill it, an enemy elite Terminator unit or a big scary character or something like that, being able to fire your unit's guns off twice is potentially devastating, and the fact that they get hot if they're going to die anyway kind of doesn't matter. So that's just a really powerful rule. I think it's one of the better, maybe not the best, but certainly one of the better Legion reactions as well. So another big tick in the box for Iron Hands. And also, it does feel very Iron Hands as well. Like, Iron Hands are just a bunch of moody fellas who are really annoyed at life, who are really sad, really angry about everything, and they're like, look, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to overheat my weapons, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to take you with me. It just really works with their flavour. And, I like about this and the Medusa Scales rules as well, it fits the flavour. And that's always a thing I love to see. I like to see rules that are good, that are actually usable, but also feel like you're playing the army that you're playing and that you've built at the same time. So this is really cool. Then we go on to the Warlord traits. So there's 3 of these. One of them is From Hell's Heart, which is a loyalist only one. Gives you a Warlord fear. When he dies, he can do D6 auto hits with ranged or melee weapon, depending on how he dies, on the unit that killed him. And it also gives you +1 reaction in the assault phase every turn as well. Now, I again think this is great from a flavour point of view. Bitter, veteran, Iron Hands character. If you kill him, he's going to do a bunch of damage on the way out. He also causes fear, which is actually quite a powerful rule now, just because leadership values are quite low. There's lots of ways to cause pinning and morale checks and stuff in the game, and taking one off leadership can be quite devastating. But also an extra reaction as well now. I think reactions are just super, a really good rule, really interesting thing to do. It gives you a bit more things to do in the game when it's your other person's turn. But, when you think about what they are, they're like a free shot with a unit. So this is an assault phase reaction. So assuming someone's charging you, which most people do try to do, most people are taking some kind of elite unit that want to get into melee with you, right? So you're getting an extra assault phase reaction. So that means you got 2 units overwatching potentially in a turn, which is just really good. Or you can get your hold the line on something to deny someone some attacks. So I really like that. That's a really good Warlord trait. There's also Eyes of Vigilance. Now this one is traitor only, so I won't be taking this one unless I have to, maybe switch to traitor at an event or something like that. But it's actually very good. Gives you preferred enemy loyalist for the unit that the character joins, which is quite hard to get. Preferred enemy, it's not a rule you see very often, but it's really good. Rerolling all your ones to hit and wound, and once per battle it gives you any reaction. So any phase at all, but it's only once a battle. So that's quite good as well. Then we got Silver Iron Will, which is my favourite. My favourite reaction, my favourite Warlord trait, sorry. So this lets you ignore anything that lowers the characteristics of the Warlord or the unit he joins. Now, a lot of things in this army are stubborn, but there's also a lot of things that aren't. So a lot of the time this will let you ignore leadership penalties, but it does let you ignore things like Radphage, or blind or concussive, which do come up sometimes. So this is an okay rule. It's not amazing. The main thing I like about this is it gives you an extra reaction in the shooting or the assault phase every turn, which I think is really good, because having the choice of those two things means that whether you're playing against a melee or a shooting army, you've always got one, and if you're playing against someone who does both, you've always got the choice. You can keep your opponent on the toes. They don't know which one you're going to pick, and I think that in itself is really good. It does stop you making reactions in the movement phase, but I don't think Iron Hands like those reactions too much anyway. It is certainly a downside, but a lot of our troops are heavy. A lot of the time, we have those movements in the movement phase reduced a little bit, so it's not something I'm too worried about, and I think it's worth it for the trade-off. So that's a really good Warlord trait. So I think Iron Hands got good Warlord traits there. I think got good things to choose from. I think you could choose any of those, depending on whether you're playing Loyalist or Traitor, and you'd be happy. I like Silver Iron Will personally, but I might change that over time. So then let's have a look at the Right to War. Now, I also think I've seen quite a bit of negative feedback online about these as well, like people don't like them, and I don't know whether that's because of changes from the Heresy 1 version, which I don't know anything about, to be quite frank. Or what, but people don't seem to like these. Now, I think these are really good. I think not only are they very cool and fun, but also I think they're quite powerful too. So, Company of Bitter Iron, Medusan Immortals become troops, so you can take them as your compulsory troops. They become line, so they become a scoring unit, and they also gain Heart of the Legion, which means they're going to get +1 to their Feel No Pain when they're near an objective, and their Feel No Pain 5 base, so that's going to make them 4. Also, anything in the army with Bitter Duty gains Hatred Traitors, so we're re-rolling our melee attacks against traitors in the first round of combat. And also, you can give characters in this army Bitter Duty for free, which means that when you've got Bitter Duty units like Medusan Immortals, you can give a character Bitter Duty so you can join the Medusan Immortals unit, which means that, he's got a unit that can stop him getting shot. And it also means that you basically give your characters Hatred, which is on characters is like quite a big deal to give them rerolls in combat. Now, the only downside to this is you got to be a loyalist, which we're going to be most of the time anyway if you're a true Iron Hand, and no Ferrus Manus, because at this point he's dead. Now, Ferrus Manus is great, I think, and really, if you want to play him, obviously you can't play this. A job done. It's really, do you want to play your Primarch in your list or not? Which obviously some people don't like doing. Some events disallow it, and if you do just want to play Ferrus Manus, obviously you're not going to play this. I like this. This is what I'm building right now. I'm painting 20 Immortals at the minute to use this because I think they look incredible. They're one of the things that really made me want to play Iron Hands. I like the look of all the breaches in Heresy, all the guys with shields. I think they're cool, but the idea of these Iron Hands semi-cybernetic, like super breaches that are also super moany and super upset at their lot in life, just sitting around on objectives holding them because they're too stubborn not to. It's just awesome, and the models are really good as well. I'm really enjoying painting them right now. So this is what I'm going to be building first for my first Heresy army. There's also Head of the Gorgon, which I believe was quite a popular Rite of War in Heresy 1. So it's got quite a few rules, this one. The main things that it does, I think, that affect the way you build your army is it gives you vehicles outflank, and this Rite of War represents the infantry pinning people in place while, you know, they get an armoured outflanking maneuver going on and they crush their enemies, which is, you know, a very Iron Hands thing to do. So vehicles getting outflank, and infantry in your deployment zone gain stubborn as well, so you're going to try and make sure they don't break before the vehicles come on, which is cool. There's a few other things as well. Any flamers that you have in the army, you can replace them with grav guns or grav shredders for 15 points. We'll come on in a minute when we talk about units and stuff as to why that's really good as well. And that could be a reason to take this outside of the vehicles outflanking thing. You might not even want to outflank your vehicles. That rule could make you want to take this just so you can give all your guys grav stuff, which is really cool. You can also take Castellax as elites, and they gain it will not die 5+, but they don't gain the Iron Hands rules. So you probably want to do that. Well, it depends really what the Castellax rules are when they come out. Dreadnoughts probably suit Iron Hands better, really, but if you're going for this mixed Head of the Gorgon thing, that's a cool thing to do. And I've got some Tagmata, and I've got these painted, so it'll be really cool to be able to put them in the same army. I've also been using some of the same colours on my Iron Hands I've used for my Tagmata, so that when I play them together, all in the army, they'll look nice and joined up and like a cohesive force. So that'll be cool when those rules come out. You can also give Ironfathers and Tech Marines a Cortex controller for 15 points. So again, we don't know what that's going to do in Heresy 2 exactly, but generally you need one to control your robots. So that's cool. Downsides of this, max 1 fast attack. I mean, we're Iron Hands, right? We outflank with like super heavy tanks. We don't need land speeders, so we're cool with that. Also, you can't seize the initiative, which is, you know, a minor downside, but, you know, little it is a downside, no doubt. So this is really interesting as well. You make a really interesting list off this. This is definitely what I'll be doing after I've played my company of Bitter Iron for a while. This will let me take lots of normal guys, normal Mark III power armor guys, lots of grav weapons, which I didn't realize until I started reading about Iron Hands recently. That would like grav weapons is like a Ferrus Manus specialty, and now that I know that, that's what I'm theming all my guys off. Like everyone's just gonna have grav guns all over the place. It does help that they're good as well, but there's gonna be grav all over the place, which is a nice little sub theme for the army. So now let's talk about the armory. So what do we get? So the first thing we get is the Ironfather upgrade. Now, this is plus 65 points. And again, every comment I've seen about this online, people talking about this as being negative, and I'm way confused as to why people don't think this is awesome. So for 65 points, you get a Cyber Familiar, which is usually 20 point upgrade, also in the same armory, gives you +1 to your invulnerable saves. You get Feel No Pain 5. You get Battlesmith 3+, which, as we said before, on its own maybe isn't the greatest rule, but if you build your army around healing vehicles, is really good. And remember, this guy can use this from inside a vehicle, so in a Spartan or a Land Raider, for example. And then he also gets a Machinator Array, which is a really, really good piece of equipment. So it's +2 attacks, and these attacks are Strength 8, AP 1. They are unwieldy, but they're also Shred and Armor Bane. So these are super powerful. And again, you know, if this guy's in, if this guy is a Cataphracti Praetor, for example, that means he's running around with 6 big attacks, because you're also going to give him, you know, a big melee weapon. And it also, the Machinator Array brings you a Flamer and a Melter Gun as well. So, you know, you're really packing on the weapons and the upgrades with this. And although 65 points is expensive, and it is quite a lot, you know, to put into a single model, it really just makes the model like a powerhouse. Like in combat, if it's a Cataphracti Praetor, he's going to have a 2+ save with a 3+ invulnerable save and a 5+ Feel No Pain, and he's going to have 2 extra attacks, 2 extra big, you know, meaningful big attacks with, you know, Strength 8. Sorry, not Strength 8. These are Strength 5, but they're going to be Shred or Armor Bane as well, which is just like super good, and it's giving him a Melter Gun for free, which he's definitely going to be firing at things too. So I think this is a really good upgrade, and I also think it's, you know, very Iron Hands. I think I put one of these in every army, even if people think it's a bit expensive. I don't think it is. I think one of these are going in every army for me. With the official Forge World model, and probably a converted one coming somewhere down the line, which is quite cool. Also, as well, worth pointing out, these Machinator arrays give you +2 to your repair rolls. And now I'm not sure how that interacts with the fact that this guy is Battlesmith 3+. It seems like kind of pointless to have both rules, because effectively he's just Battlesmith 2+, or maybe 1+ if ones don't fail on other rolls, but I'm going to assume they do. But either way, this guy's a great Battlesmith. He's always going to repair a wound if your vehicle's still there. So comboing nicely with that Battlesmith is the Blessed Auto Simulacra, which I mentioned before. So this is a 10 points upgrade for any vehicle, gives it +1 to it will not die. So with your army-wide rules, 10 points on this, you've got a 5+ it will not die. And I think on any big vehicle, armor 14 or more, you probably always take this, just because it's always worth doing that. Cyber Familiar +20 points, +1 to your invulnerable saves. Again, super powerful, super great, and also very cool modeling opportunities. Piece of war gear. Like this for me is like some kind of mechanized super servo skull that's flying around with the guy who's got it. Don't forget, this goes on characters as well, so you can also put this on unit leaders quite a lot of the time as well. I think I'm actually just going to check that and be sure. Yeah, you don't need to be an independent character to take this, so you can put this on like the leader of a Terminator unit and give him +1 to his invulnerable save, and he can maybe take some really big las cannon shots or something that are coming at your Terminators. It's just a great piece of war gear. Quite expensive at 20 points, but very good. Then we've got Gorgon armor. Now this definitely is a thing that people aren't super excited about and are quite disappointed in the rules for this now. Gorgon armor replaces whatever Terminator armor you had on. It's got a 2+ and a 5+ invulnerable save, so the same saves as Tartarus armor. It doesn't stop you doing sweeping advances, much like Cataphractii armor, so it's more akin to Tartarus armor, really, but it gives you a 5+ feel no pain. So it makes you more survivable by a few percentage points than Cataphractii armor does, and it means you can sweep and advance. It's also, when you get hit, you also have like a reactive blind, which happens at the end of any phase. So shooting or melee, when you get hit, you make at least one save or an invulnerable save. Any unit within 6 on a 4+ has to take a blind test. So it's not going to happen often, because number one, you've got to get shot. Number two, or hit in melee. Number two, you've got to be within 6 of things, so the shooting bit's even less likely. And then you've got to roll a 4+, and then they've got to fail an initiative. So it's very unlikely this does anything very often. That said, it's also not nothing. You know, like this is a free upgrade for a Praetor or anyone in Terminator armor, really. And it does make them more survivable just on a baseline, and you sort of get this bit for free. So it's not super amazing. It's not super exciting. It's kind of annoying that it's like so unreliable. Like it could just make people take a blind test without the 4+, I guess, or something. And obviously, if you're getting instant death, as a lot of people in Terminator armor will be getting targeted with, you don't get the feel no pain, so it's actually worse than taking Cataphractii armor. But I think it's good. And I'm not sure I'd put it on characters, because I'd just rather give them the Cataphractii and the Cyber Familiar and make sure they survive. But when we get to the Gorgon Terminator unit later, which people definitely don't rate right now, I'll tell you why I think that's good as well. Next thing in the armory we've got is Graviton Shredders. So again, before I read this, I'd never come across this in any Iron Hands lore I've not read a lot, but I've read some. But, apparently Ferrus Manus loved his Graviton weapons, and here we go, we got some special ones. So, Graviton Shredder is a Graviton gun, except instead of Blast, it's got Assault 2. Now, that's obviously really good, because Haywire is just a really good rule, and particularly in a game where you've got lots of things like Dreadnoughts and big armor vehicles that are tough to kill in traditional ways. Although, that's obviously a lot easier now than last edition of Heresy, because, the things like las cannons have gotten sunder. They've become cheaper. There's more of them. Ceramite's gone from the game, so melter guns are better. So Haywire's not quite as king as it once was. It's still just really good to be able to shoot vehicles and just glance them to death, and particularly Dreadnoughts as well. But it is only a 12-inch range. Now these are a graviton gun can be upgraded to a graviton shredder for an extra 5 points, and you can also, as I said before, you can buy them in Head of the Gorgon for 15 points if for any unit that's got a flamer, and also any character with a plasma pistol can change it for a graviton pistol at no additional points cost. So a graviton pistol again, standard grav rules except pistol 1. So it's a 12-inch range pistol, haywire, and that's another cool thing to have access to. So we'll come when we talk about the units in a little bit. We'll come on to why they're good and why you can do some really cool, fluffy builds around them that are also like quite powerful as well. So lastly, we've got the Armatus Necrotechnica. So this basically is a Mechanicum style device that eats the dead and uses the dead people to restore the hull points of vehicles, which is just a little bit nutty and super awesome and just begging to be converted onto a vehicle. Now, unfortunately, it's really bad rules-wise, but that doesn't mean like every Iron Hands player doesn't need a Land Raider with one of these on, with like all sorts of like Dark Elder style grabby arms coming out of it and eating people. So it's 50 points, which is the big issue. You can get a lot for 50 points. It's really expensive. And what this does is, whenever any unit, friendly or enemy, with at least one model within 6 of this vehicle has any models removed as casualties, you roll a dice for every casualty. For every 6, you get 1 hull point back. Now, that's really difficult. I mean, you've got to be within 6. It's got to be on a vehicle, and vehicles don't really want to be within 6, so you'd probably be looking to drive a damaged vehicle near a bunch of enemies in your turn and then shoot all those guys and try and eat them as they're dying, which is super fun. I'm not sure it's very good. Sorry about that. That's a very loud alarm. This is what happens when you haven't recorded for a while and you forget to turn all your sounds off. So, yeah, 50 points. Now, the likelihood is, yes, you might get a hull point or 2 back with that, but 50 points, given you've got to get so close for it, is just like really expensive. But it does do something else as well. It gives people -1 leadership when they're in 6 of the tank, which I do think is quite a powerful thing, but it affects your own units as well, and it ignores stubborn, which means all the stubborn Iron Hands units can't even use that to ignore it as well. And I think that's what you pay a lot of the points for, driving up near things and having that -1 leadership. So there's cool stuff you could do with this. You could have it on a tank that drives up to stuff. You could shoot them with pinning weapons. It's harder for them all to avoid the pinning. You could try to break some units a little bit easier. So I don't think that the rules of this really make you want to like definitely take it. There's only 1 per army as well, by the way. Make you want to definitely take it, but the modeling opportunities for it are so fantastic. You can imagine like a whole bunch of like servo arms and some kind of furnace modeled onto the back of the vehicle, and all the servo arms have got like enemy marines hanging out of them, and it's feeding them all to the furnace. Like, that's a conversion I feel like I want to do to really push myself, is that on a plastic, probably Land Raider Proteus or something like that, where you could actually drive around and do these, and then you give your Land Raider a bunch of flamers, and you build like a close range defensive weapon Land Raider that goes around eating the dead. So super interesting thing. Don't know where to come from. Really evil and horrific. Very good. Definitely, maybe more in a traitor Iron Hands army. I don't know, but definitely cool. All right, so now let's get on to the unique units. And the first unique unit that we're looking at is Ferrus Manus. So he's 465 points. I won't go over all the exact details of the stat line. I'm sure you guys have seen that. But long story short, he's a bit of a support model in some ways, right? So he's got 3 guns and he can fire them all. And he's got Battlesmith 2+. So he's, as he's walking around, he's got some support fire going on, better than support fire, mastercrafted plasma blaster, mastercrafted graviton shredder, and a heavy flamer. So he's definitely going to do some damage to stuff that he shoots. And he's also got that Battlesmith 2 as well. Now his Warlord trait, his Sire trait, is actually pretty weak. Now it would be good in a lot of legions actually, but it's not that good for Iron Hands. It gives everyone in the army a 6+ feel no pain, and we've already got a bunch of unique units with 6+ feel no pain that this doesn't stack with, which is a bit of a shame really, because you want to take Ferrus Manus, with like Gorgons for example, and they don't get a bonus from this, so it's kind of a wasted. It's a shame it doesn't just add 1. I don't think that would be too powerful, especially since instant death ignores it, and most of the other things in this army just stack. so you can take them together and don't feel bad that you're wasting stuff. But this one doesn't. But it does give vehicles it will not die 5+ base. Now, that means everything in the army, because of Medusa Scales, has got it will not die 4+. And if you give them a Blessed Auto Simulacra, it means they've got it will not die 3+, which is like a crazy low roll for everybody. And you're starting to get to the territory where even if you're putting that on a Predator or something, if it's alive, it could be worth it. And if not, it's getting 4+ for free, even if you don't add the Blessed Auto Simulacra. So I think Ferrus Manus really supports vehicles better. Now, you could also just run normal infantry with them. So your normal tactical squads, they get Heart of the Legion. So when they're near an objective, Ferrus Manus on the table, they got a 5+ feel no pain. Or veteran squads, which are probably a bit better than tactical squads and a bit more interesting because you can put more stuff on them. Just giving all those units a bit of extra feel no pain is a decent rule. But his rule also gives him an extra reaction in the assault phase as well while he's on the table, which, as I mentioned earlier, is one of my favourite things. I think it's powerful, but it's also lots of fun to have access to lots of that stuff as well, which is really good. So his Warlord trait is okay. It's not as flashy or as big as some of the other ones, giving really powerful army-wide buffs, but it's okay. The main thing I like about Ferrus Manus is, now, he hasn't quite got the number of attacks of Sanguinus or Leman Russ. He hasn't got the weapon skill 8 that a lot of the Primarchs got. He's only got 7. But he has got toughness 7, which is much more uncommon. He's got probably the best flat defenses, so he's just armor 2 and a 3+ invulnerable. Most of the Primarchs got 2 and a 4+ invulnerable with something extra conditional, which sometimes makes it better than this and sometimes makes it worse. Ferrus Manus is just like, no messing about. I've got a 3+ invulnerable. He's tough to kill. And his weapon, Forge Breaker, I think, is the best Primarch melee weapon I've seen. It doubles his strength, so he's strength 14, no messing about. He basically auto-penetrates every vehicle. It's master-crafted, so he's re-rolling his to hit rolls, although to be fair, most of them are master-crafted as well. But it's got Exoshock 3+. So whenever he hits a vehicle on a 3+, he does 2 damage. And it's also Brutal 3, which is just like crazy amounts of damage, and it means that he kills most Primarchs in 2 hits. Now, most Primarchs will take 3+ hits to kill him. So if he ends up in a Primarch and Primarch fight, he's in a great place. And if he ends up fighting anything, Terminators-wise and all that kind of stuff, he's killing basically everything in 1 hit. Things like Dreadnoughts, he's taking them down really quickly with this Brutal. So it's effectively multiplying the real amount of attacks he's doing. I think he's great. The only thing he's missing is a way to get into combat faster, because he just sort of like foot slogs. But remember, he has got some real guns, which most of the Primarchs got like 1 gun. He's packing like 3 real guns, and he's also bringing that Battlesmith as well. So, he's move 8. He can walk up with the tank for a turn. The next turn he can go and charge and start beating stuff up. So I really like him. The only problem is you can't use him in Rite of Bitter Iron, which I love. and I'm really going to play in company of Bitter Iron. So he's not going to be seeing the table for me for a while, but I think he's a great Primarch. People seem to underestimate him because he's a little bit less like flashy and a bit more basic than all the other Primarchs, but he's flashy just with great numbers. And he looks cool. I think he's one of the coolest looking Primarchs. Metal hands, metal forearms, big hammer. What more do you really want? So next we've got the Gorgon Terminator squad. Now this is, if anything's controversial in the Iron Hands Facebook group, it's definitely this unit. I think a lot of people are really disappointed with it. For me, this is like along with, I know Iron Hands haven't got many units, but this and the Immortals were the things that really made me, rate these highly for models. I love the look of these. I've never actually owned, in 30 years of Games Workshop gaming, a squad of Indomitus Terminator Marines other than the original like metal ones in the mid-90s. So I was really excited to get some of these, and they've all been assembled, and I've started painting them without even knowing what any of the weapon options do. They've all just got basic, power axes and bolters, and I'm going to add more guys into the squad later, and I hope I don't regret painting guys with weapons I don't want. But anyway, so these, I actually think these are like nowhere near as bad as people are giving them credit for. Again, like Ferrus Manus, I think they suffer from not feeling as flashy as like other Legion's elite Terminators. So people compare these against like the Sekhmet Terminators and against just Daring Terminators and all that kind of stuff. And people are looking for something just as flashy, and these definitely aren't. They're like the opposite end of the scale, so they're just cheap and effective Terminators rather than, expensive and really cool like Fire Drakes, with walking around the battlefield and all that kind of stuff. I think these are fine anyway. So they're 200 points. I explained Gorgon armor earlier and why I think Gorgon armor is like... Gorgon armor, in my opinion, is a little bit better than Cataphractii armor. With Feel No Pain, even though your invulnerable is only 5, with Feel No Pain, you are slightly more survivable and slightly less survivable against instant death weapons, which is, a little bit of a wash. But then you also get that blind rule, which is a nice little throw-in, and you also can sweep and advance, which, given the unit is going to fight in combat a lot, you want to be able to take those units off the table when you beat them. So there is quite a big difference. Unfortunately, they're not move 7; they're still move 6. So I think they're it's like a very minor upgrade / side grade from being in Cataphractii armor, but they're also a unique unit and they look different on the table and they're cool. You can also take other units to Cataphractii if you want to. In terms of the unit itself, it's 200 points, but it comes with a Thunderhammer on the Sergeant, which is probably something you would be happy to take anyway. A Grenade Harness on the Sergeant, which is something you might not take. And all the power weapons have got to be power axes, compared to like Cataphractii, where you can take any power weapon you want and you may take a different one. That's 200 points. If you bought those upgrades on a Cataphractii unit, that would be 195 points. So these are 5 points more than a Cataphractii unit. You get a slight upgrade or maybe a side grade in your armor, but they also get +1 leadership. They're stubborn, whereas Cataphractii are only inexorable, which is really good. Again, given the amount of leadership effect and stuff in the game, it's really good. And they're also, the other thing they can do is they get 1 Terminator special weapon per 3 models instead of 5. So your average unit of Terminators is going to get 1 gun in it, big gun. Whereas these, if you take 6 guys, they can get 2 guns. And because they are Iron Hands, they get access to Graviton guns, which can be upgraded to Graviton Shredders as well. So you could take 6 Gorgon Terminators with 2 Graviton Shredders. That's 4 Haywire shots in the unit. Also as well, a lot of people are unhappy that these have only got weapon skill 4 and that they can't fight other people's Terminators as well, because most of the Terminators are weapon skill 5, elite Terminators. Okay, look, your Terminators don't always have to fight other people's elite Terminators for a start. But also, when you factor in the blind that these have got, and then also the concussion that can come off the Graviton guns, they have got rules in there that can make them fight just as well or better than other people's Terminators as well. So that's a thing not to forget. Downsides to these, they can't take Thunderhammers on their guys, and I think Thunderhammers are really, really good with Brutal 2. Again, particularly if you are fighting other 2 units, the one with the Thunderhammers is going to come out on top, quite a lot. Although in this case, they'd be instant death anyway, so I guess that sort of doesn't really matter. Actually, yeah, forget that. They're going to instant death each other anyway. Kind of doesn't really matter. So that's not too much of a downside. And, another thing in this unit's favour is that they are Iron Hands, right? Every other Legion's special Terminators have that Legion's special rules, none of which, in my opinion, are as good as -1 strength to be shot at. So these are, the only elite Terminator unit that can be Iron Hands. So I think these are good. I don't think they're super flashy. I don't think they're mega exciting. They're certainly not as cool as Fire Drakes or just Daring Terminators walking around the battlefield and being, really cool units with loads of lore and, like, maybe not everyone's cup of tea in models, these either, compared to, being covered in dragon scales. But they are good. They are a good unit, and again, they are unique to Iron Hands. They look very Iron Handsy. They've got some stuff that other Terminators can't do, like taking Graviton guns, which is like really cool, or even just taking like 2 Reaper autocannons and 6 of them, 2 heavy flamers, 2 plasma blasters, whatever you do. These are cool, and I really like them, and I will definitely be running them in most of my armies. I'm going to drive them up in a Land Raider to someone. I'm going to jump them out. I'm going to haywire some guys off the board, and then they're going to stand there and be tough to kill. ideally, which I think is really good. Another interesting thing about these as well, now I'm trying to get 100% confirmation on this, but in the new edition, Graviton guns work quite well in these as well, rather than shredders, because you can fire blast weapons in Overwatch. There's nothing to stop you firing blast weapons in Overwatch that I can see. Overwatch is done at full ballistic skill now, it's not snapshots, and nothing says you can't fire a blast at all. So you can fire a Graviton gun blast at someone when they try to charge you. And then because of you roll the charge distance first, I don't think that the Graviton moving through the difficult Graviton terrain that's left over reduces the charge distance. I don't think it does, although it could do, depending on if that gets FAQ'd or not. But what it does do is it disordered charges anyone that charges you as well, because they've charged through difficult terrain. So that's also cool. That's also a good thing. You know, someone tries to charge you, you shoot your Graviton guns at them, their charge becomes disordered. Alternatively, you know, you use Bitter Duty. Not Bitter Duty. You use Gorgon Spite reaction, which is your once per game Iron Hands one, and you shoot tons of Graviton templates all over the place, leave them all in place, and you know you've walled off like an area of the battlefield in the opponent's turn, and suddenly there's just Graviton templates everywhere, and it might stop other units in their army from charging, etc. So that's kind of a good thing, and it's quite hard to make Graviton guns effective because they're heavy, so that only really works well on Terminators. And again, these are the only Terminators that can really make use of them, so that's a cool thing. It plays to that theme, that Graviton theme that we like, using this Iron Hands thing, or that I like anyway. I'm sure lots of you will like. And it makes use of something a bit different and unique. It's not just a Terminator unit with a bunch of mega weapons and WS5. It's a bit different, and it's cool, and it's interesting. Looking forward to playing with them. And I think that Iron Hands players should give them a go before they dismiss them. Now on to my absolute favourite unit in this army, the Medusan Immortals. Also a unit that people seem to be very unsure about whether they like them or not. A lot of complaints about them being nerfed. I don't know what they did before. Complaints about them being not good enough, etc. I think they're really good. So they're 205 points. You get 10 guys. They've got a 3-up save. They're heavy, even though they're just 1 wound guys. So they're rerolling their saves versus blasting template weapons. They get their board and shield. So they also get Feel No Pain 5+. They get Bitter Duty. And they are stubborn. Leadership 10 stubborn. These guys are going nowhere from anything other than actually being killed. And, you know, as luck would have it, they're quite good at not being killed, as Marines go. So they're also move 7, so I think these guys are cool. They're like super breaches, basically, which is good, you know. So they're getting that 6-up save, invulnerable off their board and shield if their power armor gets breached. They've also got that 5-up Feel No Pain as well. Now, if people want to shoot these with instant death weapons to ignore their Feel No Pain, like, people can feel free. They're 20-point guys. That's okay. And if they're doing that, they're not shooting something else that's bigger, like a tank or something like that. So these are quite cool. Weapon options are interesting on these guys. So again, they've got access to Graviton guns. Now for these, you're not going to want to leave them with Graviton guns because they're heavy. They'll be a bit of a pain to make use of them, but you can upgrade them to those Graviton shredders. And the Sergeant can also get a plasma pistol, which you can upgrade to the Graviton pistol. So 10 of these, you can spend 50 points, which is not cheap. But 50 points to give them 2 Graviton guns and a Graviton pistol, which means at 12 inches range, they've got 5 haywire shots. Now, that's quite scary for vehicles or dreadnoughts. 5 haywire shots, and they move 7 as well. So, like, you can move 7 and shoot stuff 12 inches away. And they're hard to kill, as Marines go as well. Now, when you put them in the Company of Bitter Iron, they become troops, which is, I think, when they really shine. I'm not sure I would take these outside of Company of Bitter Iron, because you wouldn't, you know, I don't think they're as good. But when they become troops and line, which means they're scoring, you can sit these guys on objectives. And they also get Heart of the Legion as well, which means their Feel No Pain goes to 4+. And then they're really tough. You know, they've got them Graviton guns, as we just said with the Gorgons. They can overwatch people who are coming into them with concussive. They've got 2 attacks each as well, and 3 on the Sergeant. Now, what they don't get is any good melee weapons. So they can take bayonets and chain bayonets, but because they got the shield, they can't use them. And I wonder if there's going to be an FAQ to that, or whether that just shouldn't be on their options list. And I was excited to have like a bunch of these guys with chain bayonets charging round and fighting stuff, but it looks like that's not going to work unless we get an FAQ. But on the upside, I've assembled them with bolters, so I can always stick them on later, and that'll be cool. So they don't get an awful lot they're going to do in melee, but I think it's good to give the Sergeant in this maybe a Thunderhammer or a Power Fist, probably, to make sure that you've got something. And, you know, to be fair, the Sergeant's got 3 attacks. So 3 attacks with a Power Fist. Bear in mind, these guys are going to have Hatred from Company of Bitter Iron as well, so they're re-rolling it to hits. That's actually quite powerful. And you can easily, you could easily take out a few Terminators just with that guy alone. He's like a little mini character, as long as you can keep him alive, which, bar snipers, shouldn't be too hard to do, with, lots of other stuff in the unit. You can also give him a Cyber Familiar in theory, but I'm not sure that would be the best idea, but not a great use of points. And you can give him Artificer Armor, so you make a little mini character in that unit, surrounded by a bunch of other guys, a couple of which have got Graviton guns, and, that's a really good unit. You can also give them Volkite charges for 2 points each. Now, I don't like Volkite weapons in this game at all. I don't think they're very Death Ray. I don't think they do a good job of sounding like Death Rays. Like, they don't penetrate armor. They're not that good at wounding stuff. Deflagrate's just like a really bad rule. Like, you damage stuff and then you have to roll to wound and they get a save again. It's like, it doesn't feel very Death Ray to me. The glaive weapon is a Death Ray, absolutely, but the ones that these guys get doesn't really do it for me. So I think the Volkite Charger upgrade's cool. It does make them strength 5 in melee, which is a nice thing to have, and it does mean that they get, some slightly better shots, but I think I'd rather just save the points and keep bolters. And again, I want to set these guys on objectives, so if they're sitting on objectives and you've got 15-inch range Volkites, even though they're a bit better than bolters, you might not be in range to shoot anything. And some bolter shots is better than, like, nothing, really. So, that said, because I'm going to assemble 2 or 3 units of these, I am going to do a unit of them with Volkites, because I don't want them all to be armed the same. And Volkites do look kind of cool, and I do kind of fancy saying Tomb when I shoot stuff, because I'm totally about the Tomb life as well. So, it's fine. If you like the Volkites, definitely an upgrade, you can take. I just don't think that they're really for me. What I would maybe consider taking is chainswords. Again, although the bolters or the Volkites, you shoot a few bullets with them, you're probably not going to do an awful lot with them. And where these guys do really shine, again, is in melee with the Hatred that they get from Company of Bitter Iron. And if you give them a chainsword when they get into combat with some traitors, they're rerolling the hits with Hatred, and then they're rerolling their wounds with the shreddy chainsword. So even though they've only got strength 4, you're probably getting quite a lot of hits through. Even though they haven't got good AP, you're probably just loading someone up. Again, 2 attacks each of these guys, 3 on the charge, just putting a ton of attacks, successful attacks through on people, and just making them roll a bunch of saves. And I think it'd be cool to see a unit with a bunch of board and seals and chainswords, which is not something I've seen before. I'm sure some of you guys have seen it. I've not seen a picture of anyone having done that before. So maybe that's an option for my 3rd unit as well. That's free as well, giving them chainswords. I'd still put the Graviton guns in the unit, probably, because I think it's good to have those. And then I think it's probably fair to mention las cutters as well, and melter guns probably. Melter guns are obviously also good, but I think the Graviton weapons are better while you've got access to them. I think that 2 haywire shots is better. But las cutters are really interesting. So they're all 8-inch range, which is like super short, but the strength 10 AP1 armor bane, which is like a monster. A monster gun. If you're going to be super close to things, it's a monster gun. And they also do give you a scary, if very unreliable, attack in melee. So strength 7 AP1, not going to instant death things, unfortunately. And they're cumbersome, so you're only weapon skill 1, although you will get to re-roll that. So you got like a 30% chance of hitting with, trying to hit on a 6 with a re-roll. So that's another option as well, viable. And these guys have got so many weapon options that are good and playable. You could have all sorts of squads with all sorts of different stuff on them and it'd look cool, and you wouldn't feel bad using any of them, like, oh, I've taken a crappy weapon option just to make it look better. They all look good. And the unit is cool, and the unit is like the most Iron Hands unit you could imagine, right? Just like a bunch of just really mardy guys who are just going to fight, and maybe they're going to die, maybe they're not going to maybe they're going to live, but they're just going to be really grumpy about it along the way, which is just like super Iron Handsy for me. So I love this unit. I think everyone should be excited about playing this unit in company of Bitter Iron particularly, and I think it's I'm really excited to be starting my army off using these guys. Now let's have a look at the other units that Space Marines have got access to that work particularly well with Iron Hands, or very Iron Handsy in flavour. And these are the units that I think I'm going to use after having read the books. Things that I'm excited to look at, and most of them are winging their way to me now from Forge World, or possibly already on my painting table. So the first one is the Iron Father. So we mentioned the Iron Father before. Cataphracti Praetor with the Iron Father upgrade. Now, in my opinion, you're going to give this guy either a Thunderhammer or possibly a Paragon Blade. I think both of those upgrades have got their reasons to be there. And Silver Iron Will, because he's probably going to be your Warlord a lot of the time, this guy as well. And that he comes out at 215 points. So for 215 points, he's 2 up save, 3 up invulnerable, 5+ feel no pain. He's got 4 attacks with that Thunderhammer or Paragon Blade, and he's got an extra 2 attacks from his Machinator array as well. Silver Iron Will makes him immune to stat changes, which is a nice thing to have. And he's also bringing that Battlesmith 3+ as well. Now this guy's like a beast. He's great in combat. He's also providing some support as well. You give him Bitter Duty in company of Bitter Iron, means he's got Hatred. So all those 6 attacks, he's rerolling them to hit. He's going to murder things, and he's really hard to kill as well, which is really good. So you can give him the Thunderhammer because he's probably going to survive long enough to use it. Or if you really don't want to do that, you can just give him the Paragon Blade, so he's going to be going earlier with that and the Murderous Strike as well. And it's just really cool. He's super Iron Hand. He's like Iron Hand's poster boy. And I think this is a really good unit. This is what's going to be leading my Iron Hands to start with. Also, I think the consoles, I think there's some really good consoles that we can use as well. So the Master of Signals, I think is just generally quite good. For 95 points, rerolling them reserve rolls. If you're playing ahead of the Gorgon, you really want to be making sure them reserves come on as soon as possible. It also helps with all our grav guns with our blast templates, so making sure we're landing them where we wanna land them as well. So I think he's quite a good option if you can fit him in. I think he'll be really cool to be able to do, and quite powerful in this edition of Heresy, is being able to kill apothecaries, like snipe them out of units. So I think the Vigilator is quite good as well for this. He's not very Iron Handsy, but I'm pretty sure you could convert like quite a cool Iron Hands Mark III looking sniper just with like some big techno sniper rifle, or maybe just a missile launcher that doubles as a sniper rifle or something like that. You can make a cool Iron Handsy style Vigilator. I think these are really good for just like taking out those characters that are making units a bit tougher, or just any characters indeed. So that's a good thing, I think, to look for as well. But then the real big one is the Moritat. So I've not seen anyone maybe clock onto this yet, and I'm kind of worried that I'm missing something, but I'm pretty sure all this is legal. If you think it's not, drop me something in the comments if you think I've missed something. So Moritat's 125 points. And if you give them 2 plasma pistols, now we can change those plasma pistols into grav pistols because we're Iron Hands, right? Grav pistols don't have Get Hot or anything that would stop them from getting all their shots when the Moritat fires. So he's got 12 shots with grav pistols, and they're all haywire. Do you think there is anything better in the game at killing vehicles than a guy with dual wielding grav pistols just blowing stuff up? Because I don't. I think that's well cool. He's got Bitter Duty. So even if you're playing outside the company of Bitter Iron, you could stick him with like a bodyguard of Medusan Immortals if you wanted to. But you play him in Bitter Iron, you stick him in the Medusan Immortals anyway. Keeps him alive. He's toting 12 grab shots. If the Medusan Immortals unit's also got 5 grab shots, as we said before, that's 17 grab shots. Someone wants to throw a load of big vehicles at you. You don't really want to do that to Iron Hands with a bunch of grav weapons, which is really cool. Maybe a little bit silly. I think I definitely want to have one of these. I will remember to turn my notifications off at some point in this episode. I think you definitely want to have one of these because Moritats are just really cool looking, and this will be a cool conversion. I saw these about a year ago and I was like, why is there a Space Marine gunslinger? This is crazy. But then I read the rules and I didn't really know about destroyers at the time, and it kind of all makes sense. But the model is cool. Both models are really cool. So convert one of those up to be a bit more iron hands with some grav pistols, and really scaring your opponent away from getting too close to you is really good. And I'm looking forward to being able to do that. The next units I want to talk about is apothecaries, and I want to talk about these in the negative sense because we don't really need to use them as much as everybody else does. So, I've seen a lot of people say, well, Iron Hands' feel no pain thing is kind of not very good because, you can spend 45 points and just get an apothecary anyway, and you can take like 8 of them in an apothecary on detachment. Now, that is true. You can do that. You can get a bunch of apothecaries in an apothecary detachment, but also we just don't have to spend the 45 points, right? So like the units that we do have feel no pain on, like Immortals, everybody else is spending 45 points to get that. So it kind of swings and roundabouts. And also, as I said, you can take snipers and shoot these apothecaries, which I fully intend to do. And, the units that I've got it built in don't have to worry about that either. So I think it's cool that we don't have to take apothecaries. And in a lot of ways, if everyone's going to be doing it and everyone's, going to have them all in the units, which is cool, it's very Space Marine law appropriate thing to have apothecaries run around, but it's been nice to be the one of the legions that isn't doing it, right? So things are a bit different. So we don't need the apothecaries, and it saves us the elite slot, and there's plenty of things we can use our elite slots on. Dreadnoughts, which mean that we don't need to take one, so that's cool. Veterans, I think veterans are just a really good unit now. That 2 wounds has really made them good, but mostly because they get all the weapon options that tactical squads don't, which is, I think, a little bit of a shame for me, but tactical squads don't get all those weapon options. So you got your veterans, and your veterans can take flamers, and in Head of the Gorgon, you can turn those flamers into graviton shredders. You see where I'm going with the theme running through all these things. You have veterans with some graviton shredders. So, you get a unit of 10 veterans. Much like I was talking about the Bitter Iron Immortals before, you get 10 veterans, you 2 of them with flamers, you upgrade into graviton shredders, you give the sergeant a plasma pistol, you turn into a grav pistol, and you stick them in a rhino or a termite, and you drive them around, you pop them up, you shoot stuff with haywire. That's like 250 points plus the transport, so that's not super powerful, it's not super good to do, it's certainly not as good as lots of the other things you can do in the game with that amount of points to drop stuff on things. But I think if you're doing like a Head of the Gorgon list, that's a cool thing to be able to do, and it's very, again, it plays in that sort of narrative of the grav guns, and it's a bit iron handsy, even if it's not the most powerful thing in the world. But veterans in general, just a nice unit as well. Destroyer assault squads. Now these are cool because they come with bitter duty. So if you run these in, bitter iron, it means they get hatred, which is good. And it also means you can put a character with them you can give bitter duty to as well. And that gives you a way of getting a unit up the field that's actually got bitter duty, because Immortals aren't that mobile, and you don't really want to spend points on a Land Raider for every unit of Immortals because they can't ride in a Rhino. Whereas Destroyer Assault Squads can obviously jump around, give you a bit of mobility, give you a bit of something different to do in a static army. Maybe you might not consider this the most iron handsy thing to have some jump troops, but every legion used a bit of everything, right? So having these guys in their iron armor with their jump packs jumping around also makes your army a bit more fun to play because you got something different, and the bitter duty thing works as well. So I think that's quite a cool unit, and they are quite good at killing Marines as well, with the rad weapons and that kind of stuff too. Toxiferin Flamer, which is also crazily named, really cool weapon. So I think they're also a good thing to look at as well. And the next one is a big one, is Contemptor Dreadnoughts. Now I do think looking at these with my competitive eye, these are, I think Contemptor Dreadnoughts are probably maybe a little bit too good. And I think, they're certainly very powerful just in general. They're cheap. They don't have any of the downsides of vehicles, and they're harder to kill. They can't be penetrated and take extra damage or lose weapons, etc. But they're still very tough. They've got great armor saves, a 2-up and a 5-up invulnerable, and they're not irrelevant in combat either. Even if you give them no combat weapons, they can still fight and punch and hit things with their gun barrels and stuff. These are really good. I think that these are probably going to be like, you know, when you get people who are really trying to win events, you're going to see a lot of dreadnoughts on the table, and Iron Hands ones are going to be even better because, you know, that -1 strength to shoot them makes them all like very, very difficult to kill. So I think you got to be careful with these because I think if you, although there's definitely like, it feels very Iron Handsy to run a lot of dreadnoughts, and clearly we work very well with them. I think you do run the risk of giving your opponents some pretty poor games if you play too many of these. So I'm definitely going to use these, and they will be very good, but I'm going to try and limit myself to not having too many of them on the battlefield, or at least making sure if I'm playing a casual game that my opponent knows I'm bringing them, so he can make sure he brings something that can kill them, otherwise it's going to be a bit dull. So, anyway, arming these, I really like these with double Gravis Last Cannon and a helical targeting array, which is kind of like doing an impression of a Deredio, but I just really don't like the Deredio model. So you can just do it with these, with the helical targeting array, which is cool. It gives you some interceptor, some ability to shoot down flyers in the army, and just like las cannons, like laser cannons are cool, right? So that's kind of one way of doing it. So I'm gonna magnetize these, but I'm gonna use one of those. And the other one, I think I'm going to use like a close range dreadnought. So either a power fist or a chain fist. Probably a power fist because the brutal's really good on it. Although again, maybe overkill because of the instant death. So maybe we might just go with the chain fist for the armor bane and a Gravis melter gun. And obviously on that melee weapon, an underslung grav gun because we're Iron Hands and we've got the option to do it. So extra grav is good. So yeah, dreadnoughts super good with Iron Hands. Probably a bit too good. Maybe just be a bit careful about how many of them you use, lest you lose some friends. Tactical squads. I quite like tactical squads. I think Fury of the Legion's kind of an okay rule, but you know they're only shooting bolters. I don't understand why these guys didn't get extra weapons. Maybe there's a lore thing I'm missing out on there, but I was under the impression tactical squads in the Heresy still had the classic special weapon and heavy weapon, but maybe not. But you know, they get Heart of the Legion, which is cool. If you're playing them with Ferrus Manus, that can get them to a 5+ Feel No Pain for a unit of 10 guys. Obviously, they've got the Iron Hands -1 strength as well, which helps them even more. So you can get them to like reasonably tough. You can get them to be, you know, like reasonably tough given their points, and obviously they are a line unit, you know, which is like a super important thing to have access to. You know, some of your squads have got to score. Which is cool. So I think that's a thing you should maybe consider just filling your army out with. Plus, it's nice to just put some Space Marines on the table as well. And then tactical support squads, I think as well, are really good. Again, particularly in Head of the Gorgon. So tactical support squad, 5 guys with flamers. We can give them all Grav Shredders. We have the most Iron Handsy looking unit known to man, and this would be a good unit to build out of maybe like the Mark 6 box coming when you've got like nice cheap access to lots of plastic special weapons. You take 5 of these in a Rhino is 180 points, and that's 8 grav shots. Or you know, if you're doing something like drop pod assault or underground assault or something like that, units of these like are bringing an awful lot of haywire. So again, you know, great for blowing up people's tough units, or you know, your local cheesemonger who's spamming dreadnoughts, just spam Grav Shredders and show them what's what. It's a great way to do it. Recon squads and Seekers. So I like both of these. Main reason, again, as I said earlier, shooting apothecaries, getting them out of units. I think it'd be, it's not like super Iron Handsy. Again, it doesn't feel super Iron Handsy, but equally good opportunity for some conversions. Like Recon and Seeker squads being in iron armor to me is like pretty funny. And it'd be interesting to see how the Iron Hands would make the Mark III armor better at Recon. You know, maybe they'd just wrap a cloak around it. I don't know. Maybe they'd have some grav boots that made them a bit quieter when they walk around. I don't know. There's definitely some opportunity to make these look cool. Nemesis bolters on them, you know, shooting out them apothecaries. I think you could take either of those quite happily, and you know, get access to be doing that. Next unit I really like is the Sabre. I love this tank when it come out. I love like World War II style tank destroyers. You know, this is obviously very much based on a Hetzer or a Stug. If you follow or know anything about World War II. I believe also these weren't like really played very much last edition because they just weren't very good. But if you look at them now, for 80 points, you get a tank, which has got an armor value, so it's a low one, so it'll be, blow up to anti-tank weapons, but it's immune to small arms fire, with like quite a good little auto cannon. So it rends on a 5+, and it's got twin linked as well. So you 2 shots, you're twin linked, quite reliably going to hit with them both. It's only strength 7, but you just need a 5, and it's also got sunder, which is cool as well. So that's a lot of rerolls on a little gun. So you got your strength 7, you're going to try to sunder something. If you fail to penetrate, you're going to roll again. So you got to, more than a 50% chance of getting that 5 to rend, and all of a sudden your little flanking autocannon tank, which you're going to flank with Head of the Gorgon, is easily hitting like a 13-14 for AP in the sides of enemy tanks, or maybe the backs of enemy tanks, and that's only 80 points. And it goes in the fast attack slot as well, which we might only get access to one thing in that slot, but it freezes up a heavy support slot for more like bigger tanks. So I think these are really cool, and the best thing is they look amazing, and it's a really good way to get them on the table and actually make use of them by outflanking them in Head of the Gorgon, so they can get there safe, deliver their little snub auto cannon into the back of stuff, and still be cheap while they're doing it. You can give them a multi-melter for 25 points, which makes them even more dangerous, but does increases their points cost quite a lot, percentage wise. And the other thing you've got on the fast attack slot that I like is the javelin. So again, maybe not the most super Iron Handsy thing, but I've never seen an Iron Hands javelin, so it'd actually be cool to own one. Toughness 6, which makes them interact really well with the -1 strength ability from Medusa Scales. Obviously they outflank by default, so you can run these in bitter iron as well to get you some outflanking, and I like these with las cannons. So you get 2 las cannons and a heavy bolter. You probably upgrade that to a multi-melter since it's cheap. So for 95 points you get 2 las cannons and a multi-melter, outflanking, quite powerful, which is good. Maybe the gun's a little bit better than the saber in the same slot, but the good thing about the saber is it's a denial unit, whereas the javelin isn't, although the javelin's got a bunch of other cool special rules and is probably much harder to kill. The javelin's probably the better choice, technically, but the saber just looks cooler. But either one of these, in a fast attack slot, just adds a little bit of something extra to the army. The army's a bit slow, a bit static, regardless of what rite of war you're using. Having even just 1 or 2 units to outflank just gives your opponent that little extra thing to worry about. So I definitely want to get one of these, also for a bit of variation in the army, so we're not just using lots of heavy tanks and men with shields. A bit of variation putting these things in, which is cool, a bit more fun to play the army. Onto heavy support, then we've got the Leviathan. So again, same rules apply as the Contemptor here. These are, even outside of Iron Hands, these are very good, probably maybe too good, maybe not much fun to play against. Toughness 8 with the Iron Hands -1 strength means that even las cannons only wound them on a 4, which is pretty good. All of their guns are good. Unfortunately, the Gravflux Bombard is really bad, and it looks like it got worse between the playtest and the release. It used to have AP2 and now it's got 4, so that's kind of a bit sucky. I'm still gonna magnetize one and use it, but I really like the dual storm cannons, or maybe just the melter lance on a melee weapon to have these walking up the board. So I've got one of these already, so I am going to use it, but again, be careful how many dreadnoughts you put in your army, because you're going to give some people some really dull days. The Deredio, likewise, not much more to say about that, exactly the same. Guns are good on it. I prefer the look of the Contemptor personally, but that's another really good option to go in your heavy support slots as well, for the same reasons the other dreadnoughts are very, very good. Legion heavy support squads, I think are pretty decent as well now. If you're trying to fill your heavy support out, but you don't want to take more tanks, or you don't want to put too many dreadnoughts on the board, having these with 4 las cannons, for example, is a lot of anti-armor. You give them a Cognis Signum to make them hit on 2s. It's 165 points if you give the leader Artificer armor. And again, if someone tries to come and run an assault unit into them or something like that, just to easily kill them, you can use Gorgon Spite and shoot 8 las cannon shots at them, which would be really nice. So I like these. I'm looking forward to having a squad of Mark III iron armored heavy support weapon guys, and they'll get a 6 for feel no pain off Ferrus Manus if he's on the board as well, which is good. Predators and Vindicators, I think, are both cool. I think they're just tough enough as long as you keep their frontal armor facing forward. They're just tough enough to benefit from the it will not die stacking rules. You know, like sometimes they got 4 hit points, only armor 13, but they will survive sometimes enough to get that heal up. And when they do survive, you know, you've got a good chance of putting them back to sort of like full hit points, which would be good. Again, Dreadnoughts are better than them. But that would be, obviously, if you're running Armoured Spearhead, you're going to run Predators anyway. And also, again, please don't spam Dreadnoughts. It's not going to be fun for anybody. So, I really like Demolisher Cannons as well. That's another thing I've seen. I don't know what these used to do different. Maybe they were just, I think they had a lower armor penetration than they've got now. But they're really cool. They're like Strength 12 AP3. So they blow up normal Marines fine. They've also got Rendon, and they're quite good at doing damage to vehicles as well. So I really like Demolishers, and they do feel. I always feel like Vindicators feel very like Iron Handsy. You know, they feel like they fit really well with like Iron Hands, Imperial Fists, Iron Warriors. You know, that kind of stuff, which is really cool. So I think they fit well. I also don't really like the look of Predators, the Heresy era Predators with the turrets really far back. So I think I'm probably going to get a Vindicator to go in my army. And we get onto the big tanks. Now these are the ones that really benefit from that it will not die stuff. So the Kratos new tank, 14 armor value, HP 5. You can give it a flare shield. It's got lots of guns that you can customize depending on whatever you want to shoot, and it's pretty difficult to kill, especially if you can it will not die it and repair it, which is cool. And they really benefit from all those rules, and they look great, and they're in plastic, which is everything we want. So this, I think, getting one of these should be on every Iron Hands player's list right now. You should all be picking one of these up. Proteus Carrier, Land Raider Proteus Carrier, likewise, armor 14. It's tough. It works well with our rules. What I like about these is you can carry 6 Gorgon Terminators in it, and 6 Gorgon Terminators is the number you need to get to, as I said before, to get 2 special weapons in the unit. So you could have 2 Grav Shredders jumping out of a Proteus Carrier. You know, the Proteus Carrier's got a bunch of las cannons. You got some Grav guns firing out there, and so on, which would be cool. You can also put your Medusan Immortals in these as well. So I definitely feel like I want 2 of these for various different tasks I'm going to use them for in different armies. Also, as well, it's been a long time since I've owned a classic-looking Land Raider, so it'd be cool to have one of those. The Spartan, for similar reasons, you know, flare shield, big armor, it works well in Iron Hands. I don't think I really want to spend all those extra points on a Spartan over a Land Raider. I think I'd probably rather have some Land Raiders driving my guys around and a Kratos if I want to shoot stuff. I don't think I really want, I've not seen any good reasons outside of maybe units of like 10 Gorgon Terminators or putting a unit of Cataphracti in them. I'm not sure I want a Spartan right now. I'm sure some of you will want them. Definitely works really well with our rules, I think. And then we come on to Super Heavies, and again, they're hard to kill. The more hit points they've got, the better they work with our rules, which is great. And you can put a Battlesmith near them. You can make sure that Battlesmith is able to repair them, etc. My pick for Super Heavies would be the Fellblade or the Glaive. I think they look the coolest primarily, but I also think they're the best for doing what we want to do. You know, we want things. I think the Tank Destroyer style ones are good, but we want to make sure that we're able to kill Marines and all that kind of stuff as well. So I really like the Fellblade with lots of weapons. I think that it's a bit better than the Glaive, but the Glaive Death Ray is like really difficult not to want to buy. And it's painted Iron Hands colours as well on Forge World, which also helps. So I think one of those is a good pick if you're going to go with a Super Heavy. Just come back to the Spartan, something I did forget to say. If you're going to have like a unit of Gorgons or whatever, and you want your Iron Father to join that unit and be transported into battle, that's when you want the Spartan, I think. So the Spartan goes with maybe, a reasonably sized unit of Gorgons with the Iron Father in. The Iron Father means that if that unit of Gorgons does get charged, even though they're not the best in combat, they've got your Iron Father who is a monster in combat, and he's, they put all the damage in there, and he can repair the Spartan from inside it, etc. Spartan makes sure he gets into combat as well. So that's my first army I'm building, because I've got a plastic Spartan in the box, like a lot of you, is going to be using that with my Iron Father and my Terminators inside. And the last unit on my list, and I'm not sure why it's at the bottom, it should have been in the elite section, is Rapiers. I really like Rapiers. I don't know whether they're popular or not. But I think they work really well. You get quite a big gun on them for 65 points with the Laser Destroyer. And obviously it also works with our Legion rules. Again, if you lose one guy, you can take the next hit on the Rapier Carrier, which is toughness 5, which means people have got to shoot it with a real gun to kill it. And, all these units that are quite hard to kill with small arms, like a lot of the Terminators and all that kind of stuff. Yes, people can shoot them with their last cannons and their multi-melters and that kind of stuff, but you're going to have tanks you're playing Iron Hands, so if they're shooting at your infantry and you're scoring units with big guns, they're not shooting them at your tanks. So instead, they might want to shoot them with small arms, which they're very good at, not dying to. So that's it. I look through all of the units, all the different units that are in there. My army that I'm building, just to give you an example, this is my 2,500 point army that I'm putting together for release and for the first event I'm going to be going to. Is going to be Legion of Bitter Iron, as I've mentioned a couple of times. So I'm going to run a Cataphracti Praetor Ironfather with a Paragon Blade or a Thunderhammer. I'll probably make that decision when I build the model and see what looks cooler. And Silver Iron Will as his Warlord trait. I'm going to run a Moritat with 2 Grav Pistols. Then I'm going to run 2 units of Medusan Immortals, both with 2 Graviton Shredders and a Thunderhammer in their units. The Moritat's probably going to join one of those and walk up the board with them. So I think importantly, that Moritat's probably, maybe a little bit silly for people's vehicles. So, not sticking him in a Rhino or doing any silly Alpha Strike stuff with him. Going to walk him up the board, play him a little bit more interactively, make sure it's fun to play against, a bit more fun to play against. And then I've got 6 Gorgon Terminators with 2 Chain Fists and 2 Graviton Guns, or maybe Shredders if they Graviton Guns can't fire Overwatch. See how that works out. They're going to be in a Spartan with a multi-melter and blessed auto simulacra. So the Ironfather's going to join them in the Spartan probably. Or maybe he won't join them. Maybe he'll get Bitter Duty and go with the other unit of Medusan Immortals and walk up the board. Maybe we'll do it that way instead. That could also be cool. And then I'm going to use 2 Contemptor Dreadnoughts, which I think is a reasonable number. So one's going to be a Melter Cannon and a Graviton Gun and a Chain Fist. The other one's going to be 2 Gravislas Cannons and a Helical Targeting Array to shoot down them flyers. And then I'm going to use 2 Rapiers because I've got them, I've built them. I think they look super Iron Handsy. And I actually think they're kind of cheap for big laser destroyers, which I'm going to use on them. So 2 of those. And then finally, I'm going to use a Kratos. And I'm going to give my Kratos 4 Las Cannons and the Blessed Auto Simulacra. I haven't decided whether I want to give it the Melter Turret or not yet. I don't think we've seen any pictures of it, so maybe... I don't think the Battle Cannon looks that great, even though it's maybe a better gun, so we might go with the Melter. I really like Melter weapons. The Salamander in me really likes Melter weapons, so I like having a few of them in the army. And that's my 2,500 point army. So I'm hoping to... walk the Immortals up the board as my scoring units, joined by some characters, potentially. Not a lot of scoring units, only having 2, but I'm not really sure I want to assemble 3 units of Medusan Immortals just yet. And then I've got the Terminators in the Spartan, which is one of my offensive units. People don't really rate these very much, but they're great models. They're in a Spartan. They're going to do something good. They're going to be tough to kill. And they're going to be backed up with my 2 Dreadnoughts, one of them walking up the board with the Immortals to kill whatever tries to come into combat with them. One of them providing fire support, interceptor support, maybe shooting down flyers, hanging out with the 2 Rapiers. And then the Kratos also providing extra fire support. And I think that's quite a good spread of lots of stuff. Shows off the Grav thing particularly. I've got lots of Grav weapons in the army, which is really what I was going for. Uses the new models, uses all the Forge World cool models, and gets me to run Legion of Bitter Iron so I can be grumpy all day and roleplay, which is totally not what I'm normally like at all. So there you have it. That's the end of the episode. I hope that it was interesting. I hope that that towed the right balance between talking about the rules and what we can do with the Iron Hands stuff versus what's maybe fun and makes an interesting Iron Hands army. I'm going to reiterate again, please don't spam Dreadnoughts. I think that's probably going to be not fun for anybody involved. If you like the episode or have any feedback or comments or thoughts or anything at all, Please drop me some comments on YouTube. I'd love to hear what you think and have a chat to you about those things. If you enjoyed the content as well, please do like and subscribe. I'd be really interested to see if this content is something people are enjoying. And finally, I'm going to leave you with a quote from none other than Ferrus Manus to finish this off. So, and this is really important for Iron Hands players to remember this. Hatred of what is natural, of what is human, is the first and greatest of the corruptions. Bear that in mind before you cut off your hand and replace it with bionics. Bye.